Hey guys, Hyper here, back with another Mage Beta BFA guide, and today I'll be talking about the two most common sort of talent builds in Mythic Plus at the moment, and the pros and cons of each, and I guess what situations you want to use talent build 1, and in what situations you want to use talent build 2. I'm also going to talk about obviously the talent choices, but I'm going to skim over some of them, the more obvious and trivial talents, just so this video isn't too long. So let's dive straight into it. Now, in terms of the first row, you either go with Bone Chilling or Ice Nova, simply because, well, you don't really go with Lonely Winter, simply because you need the pet to benefit from Shatter. And if you don't know what Shatter is, then go to my previous video. There's a link will be in the description, which explains in detail what is Shatter and how to sort of play your rotation around it to benefit from it. So now I prefer running Ice Nova just because, again, it's another way for you to proc Shatter onto Glacial Spike or Comet Storm, whatever it may be. Bone Chilling is also good. A lot of people do run this, and it's just a flat 5% damage increase. And oftentimes, if you're going to be running this build, which is the one I'm going to be talking about first, where you're going to cast a lot more Glacial Spikes, then this is really good because 5% of Glacial Spike damage is a lot. I'm going to skip this row. I will talk of this row just a little bit later in the video. Skipping this row. Now, this row is just a quick point is regarding Frigid Winds. Now, on very high Mythic Plus keys where your tank needs to be able to kite, Frigid Winds is probably the talent that you need to be picking, even though with Ice Ward you're going to get an extra Frost Nova charge, which is another way for you to benefit Shatter. But you currently, Frost Mages are one of or the only class and spec that is able to maintain a permanent slow on mobs, and obviously this is a lot of utility in high Mythic Plus scenarios, like think Halls of Valor or think Neltharian's Lair, even BRH, where the tank just goes in, pulls really big, and then starts kiting. And there's no way you're going to be able to do that without a permanent slow. And in Legion, that was the Warlock slow ring. And in BFA, with Legendaries gone, class utility is very strong. And I think Frost Mages are going to be, a must-have sort of spec in Mythic Plus. So that's good news for Frost Mages. So next up, let's skip this row. We'll come back to that later. Let's talk about the very last row, and you'll definitely be taking Glacial Spike. There's no point even discuss. There's no arguing this, just because of the damage numbers with Glacial Spike right now. So coming back to this row. Now the first build involves splitting ice and splitting the damage of Glacial Spike. So let's just show you the rotation of this particular build. So what's good about this build is also you can use the Brain Freeze procs right away, unless you're on bosses. But if you can freeze the mob, then use Brain Freeze right away. So here I've got 5 stacks of Icicles. I'm going to cast a Glacial Spike into Pet Freeze. And my Glacial Spike is going to benefit from Shatter. And once you hit crit cap, which is 33.323%, you'll 100% crit. But because of the stat squish, I'm not quite there yet. So that's one way of doing it. The previous method I showed was Glacial Spike into Pet Freeze to benefit from Shatter. This is also one way of doing it. Let me get my pet on follow first. And get out of combat as well. If I switch to Ice Nova, this is also one way. I Glacial Spike into Ice Nova. And that also benefits from Shatter. And the final way of, shattering your Glacial Spike, so to speak, is quite an interesting one. I'm just going to show you to it first, and I'll show you the macro that I used to do it after. And it goes Glacial Spike. So did you see what I did there? Was basically what I did was I cast the Glacial Spike, and then I use this macro, which is Shimmer into Frost Nova. And what it does is, at the end of the destination of my Shimmer, my blink, I'm going to cast a Frost Nova. Well, it didn't work because it's still on CD and I'm silly, so I had to wait. But yeah, that's let me just wait for this cooldown so I can show you what it exactly does. And so it blinks. I'm going to blink there, and then I'm going to Frost Nova at my destination. Yep, there it is. So that's 3 ways which you can sort of shatter your Glacial Spike, and that's Pet Freeze, Ice Nova, and the blink into Frost Nova. And what's good about this build, this first build that we're talking about, is Glacial Spike will hit 2 targets basically, and you can shatter both of them. So a huge amount of damage. And it's good for high Mythic Plus scenarios where you're not going to do massive pulls just because the tank won't be able to survive it. And it's just good consistent damage and good consistent cleave damage and a lot of priority target damage, which is in many scenarios you want to kill a certain mob faster because it does a dangerous debuff or whatever it may be. And this is a very, very good build. So the second build involves Comet Storm. Now this is my personal favorite just because it's more button suppressed and it's a little bit more skill involved. And this particular build you want to go for when the pools in the dungeon are very big, and or even on hierarchies where you have a Blood DK or a Vengeance Demon Hunter where you can sort of group the mobs up very quickly, because Comet Storm AoE is actually very, very small, 6 yards. And so just let me show you the rotation for this. Well, basically this rotation, this particular build talent choice makes it so that your damage windows comes in every 30 seconds, and it's a very huge burst. Let me just show you really quickly. So I'm going to Comet Storm into Pet Freeze and into Ice Nova, and I'll explain why I do it in this order after I do it. So here it goes. So look at that, I bursted up to like nearly 100k. Sometimes I'll go over 100k. I'm not really that geared as well. So the reason why I do Comet Storm into Pet Freeze again is obviously because I can get my first half of my Comet Storm to benefit from Shatter, and then Ice Nova at the second half to make a crit. So you see lots of crits, lots and lots of crits, even though I'm only at 17% crit, and that's because I'm making use of the Shatter passive. And so yeah, that's basically that build, the second build. And that happens every 30 seconds because Comet Storm's in a 30-second window, and you're doing that burst. And that's comparable to sort of Arms Warrior burst as well. Maybe not as high, but we get to do it every 30 seconds. Whereas Arms Warrior, I think, is a minute cooldown. And so there I have it. That's the 2 most common talent builds. So if you remember at the start of the video, I also talked about Runa Power, and theoretically, it's probably the highest DPS choice that you have, just because of the amount of damage that you can, because all your damage is coming in a 30-second window, and your Runa Power, why not use Runa Power to buff that even more? And just let me show you like the potential for this, the rotation you want to do for this build. So obviously you want to get to 5 stacks of Icicles again. Then you cast Runa Power, Glacial Spike into Pet Freeze, into Comet Storm, into Ice Nova. And that's a ridiculous amount of damage. But yeah, that's the rotation with Runa Power. And that way you get your Glacial Spike to benefit from Runa Power, you get your Comet Storm to benefit from Runa Power, and yeah, it's a crap ton of damage. And so that's it. There you go. There you have it. That's the 2 main M+ builds right now for Frost Mages. I hope you liked this video. If you did, give me a thumbs up, give me a follow. And obviously the link to the previous video will be in the description. I'll see you guys on the next video. Peace.